Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to the In-House Counsel Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and welcome to the ninth and final In-House Counsel Forum discussion program for 2023. I'm Ashish Razdan. I'm a partner at the Corporate and M&A practice in Khaitan and Company's Mumbai office. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you who are attending from India or from around the world. Just a quick background again for the webinar program that is the In-House Counsel Forum. It was really put together on the back of the great success that the firm's virtual M&A programs uh, achieved over the last 2 years. And the In-House Counsel Forum is really designed to be a private educational program and discussion forum tailored specifically for in-house counsel teams. And the reason we say it is private is that because the participation is by invitation only and it is not open to public at large. We issue invitations by email to our general counsel friends, chief legal officers, and senior in-house counsel. And all those invitations are extended not just to those individuals, but also members of their respective in-house legal teams. Our hope is to really, through this process, provide some form of continuous legal training and education, and also provide a forum to exchange thoughts around different experiences that exist within the in-house legal community. Um, so I think the next slide will really tell you about the agenda for the discussion today. Um, I think we will go on just to give you a very short introduction about our guest speakers. Next. I'm very pleased to welcome Vineet, Bhavika, and Sharyu for the panel discussion today. Vineet, of course, is a global general counsel of Tech Mahindra and its group companies. Bhavika is the general counsel and head legal of Restaurant Brands Asia Limited. Sharyu is the group general counsel for Acco Technology and Services Private Limited. Uh, Before I ask them to tell us a little bit about their own journeys, just a quick introduction from me. Vineet, of course, is a global general counsel of Tech Mahindra and its group companies, leads a team of over 100 lawyers spread across the globe with presence in India, US, Mexico, UK, Netherlands, and Israel. He's responsible for taking care of the legal and regulatory aspects and multi-billion cross-border commercial transactions, which includes mergers and acquisitions, also disputes and litigation, global compliances, legal policy and regulatory, IPR, and strategic legal support. Vineet has an experience of over 27 years at various reputed organizations like TCS itself, HCL, American Express, and also as an independent legal practitioner, and has worked across a variety of practice areas. Bhavika from Restaurant Brands Asia is a general counsel for the group company. She works across India and Indonesia. She's been involved in the QIP fundraise and the acquisition of Burger King Indonesia business. And her day-to-day work really involves, working with legal contracts, property agreements, advisory to business on various facets of operations, overseeing licenses and other forms of compliance, managing the IPR portfolio, as well as the policy making and implementation of new applicable legislations to business. Before Restaurant Brands, she also worked at Pepperfry, Heinz India, Lakeshore India, and ILNFS Investment Managers. Lastly, Sharyu, who's the Group General Counsel for Acco Technology and Services Private Limited. She's really a startup veteran, having spent over a decade in leadership roles working in fast-paced industries like e-commerce, whether it is Flipkart, Myntra, FinTech, Razorpay, and now InsurTech, which is Acco. She's a trusted leader with deep focus to strengthen the voice of legal teams in organizations to bring law-abiding, creative, and high-impact solutions, resulting in legal teams moving beyond just the operational and support roles to a more key advisory role in the industry. In addition to supporting the business, she's also a strong voice that believes in action on the diversity and inclusion charter, both within and outside her organization. And lastly, I'd also like to welcome my fellow partner and co-conspirator Rahul Dutt, who is a partner with Khaitan and Company's corporate practice in Mumbai, but in an earlier avatar spent a lot of time with the Reliance Industries in-house legal team. So this is a conversation where he's well placed to give us a little insight on how he has seen the shift in how general counsel and in-house counsel teams have evolved. But perhaps before I jump and ask each of our panelists for their own story of how they have seen the role evolve, Rahul, would you like to take the first crack at in your own experience, how have you found the position of in-house counsels in Indian companies evolve over the last decade or maybe decade and a half?
Yeah. So sure, Ashish, thanks for that, and of course, very good morning to, to the panelists and everybody else joining in. I mean, I have 25 years experience under the belt, and probably I think I should start probably giving a perspective that I have sort of felt at my own level, and I'm sure the other panelists will have their own perspectives and experiences. But I would really like to start, end of 80s and beginning of 90s, because before the markets really opened up, you had companies which were not doing complex deals. The deal sizes were low. If you ask any company, what kind of issues they face, they were really real estate issues, tax issues, compliance issues. So the issues that companies face at that point of time were also not very complicated, were not very large value. So when the markets really opened up, that's when also foreign investment came in, and the foreign investors expected the companies in India in which they were investing, those companies to have strong legal teams. And I think at that point of time also the larger companies also realized that, look, you have corporate governance issues, of course, apart from new transactions they were doing, and all of that complex litigation came in. So they also thought that, gone are the days when they could tell the board that, look, we've talked to our external advisors and they've said this, so we followed that. The boards increasingly in companies in India, especially the bigger companies, started saying, well, that's fine, but what do you guys feel? And do we have a strong internal team as well? So that's when I think it started, and the CEOs decided that, look, we not only need good technical expertise at house, but we also need people who we can actually trust. But before trust comes people who have the approach to understand business, because unless you understand the business, you will not have a CEO trusting you. So it was a sort of evolution like that, and I remember, there was, for example, there was a quote which I heard, and there was a Reebok CEO who told his general counsel that, and his general counsel's name was Jack, and he said, Jack, I mean, I hate lawyers, but not you, because you don't count. But of course, I think that you don't count is really telling. It's not, obviously, it's not on competency of Jack, but it's basically telling Jack that, look, for the lawyers that I trust, it's who I trust the most. So I think in-house, the basic fundamental role of an in-house, apart from technical capabilities and all of that and understanding business, is also at a personal level, the GC at least should be somebody who the management trusts. And also because unless you have a strong GC, you can't have an organization under him which the other organizations, other verticals within companies will actually trust and become partners with. So I think that sort of helped. And now over the years, really, I mean, again, going back to 90s, your tax departments were doing your in-house role, etc. But you got good, solid in-house counsels, and the pay scales. I mean, one of the ways to attract good lawyers in your teams. I remember, for example, in my experience in Reliance Industries, the older law firms used to complain to the GC that, look, you've upset the apple cart, because Reliance is actually offering fantastic pay scales. So we had fantastic recruits from national law schools. 3 or 4 of my colleagues have actually become general counsels of listed companies already. Who were back my colleagues when I was in Reliance. So you had fantastic lawyers, technical expertise was there. The role sort of then evolved from just a simple service provider, because the management started saying, well, for a service provider, I mean, I can go to an external law firm, but you need to be partnering with me. You need to be a leader. You have to have the approach of being a leader, because and another telling sign. I mean, all through we've heard that the head of legal departments are called general counsels, but now you start calling them chief legal officer, because there's a C attached to it. It's in the C-suite, given that much importance. So really, it's evolved, and people now in-house, the expectation is that you have to be a leader, you have to be a partner, you have to be somebody who can sit with the management, bring value, and find solutions. and of course also be a conscience keeper, because that element, of course, and that depends on the management. I mean, ultimately, a good management has to give that freedom to the in-house counsel, to the GC, to be able to bring that value also to the table. So I think over the years, in the last 30 years, that has really evolved. Now the in-house teams have actually, evolved into not only as a service provider, not as a leader, but also as entities which are, which have their own goals. And of course, the other panelists will probably explain that better. But I hope this is a good segue into next sort of round of questions which come in.
No, thanks, Rahul. Thanks for setting the context. And I think going back to the 90s was definitely a good place to start, because we do see the evolution being kickstarted in many ways with the liberalization of the Indian economy, which basically would, I think is a perfect sort of reason for me to call on Vineet and just tell us about, his own journey, because he's also been a veteran. He spent a fair amount of time across industries and companies, and how he has viewed this space sort of change, and where does he find himself today as a global sort of general counsel of a multi-million sort of conglomerate. And I don't want to get into what keeps him up at night. I think that's a question for later. But just in terms of his day job, how has that evolved, and how do you see it going forward?
So thank you. And I think, Rahul, that was quite a context. I would like to add a couple of lines, because it takes me to the 90s. And also to the fact that, we've lived at a time largely sitting at law firms' offices with our files, seeking appointment with the litigation or the corporate practice lawyer to help the company and show the way forward. So those were the times particularly. But another moment I think is important is the fact that, when I started my career, I had some good percentages. I thought I was good at numbers. Why don't we try? So there were not many career options. So the foremost were doctors, engineers, and chartered accountants. And probably it finished there. And lawyers probably came later for the people who would either be, wanting to join their family to preparing for civil services and parallelly doing their law, and the like. So I think that was generally the environment, and therefore I thought, let me try my hands on chartered accounting, and started with the internship, did well, did my intermediate, but then suddenly find it's not working well for me. Possibly the next level of accounting was not working well, and maybe the DNA coming from my father, grandfather, who were lawyers, was pulling it back, and therefore as a second choice, taking up law as not really as a second choice, but the next choice really, and company secretaryship both. And the company secretaryship had also opened up at that point in time, and they were very complementary to each other, and they still are. And that's how the education starts. I do my SRCC, then again I'm thinking whether should I be doing CA only, and so on and so forth. So there's all that confusion. Lawyers, as I see at my house, is like, and visiting the court is rushing between courtrooms, etc. So the lawyers primarily would be litigation lawyer, as would be understood in those times. And then the times get to change. I start more as a company secretary because the globalization has happened. We are talking of new companies coming to India, Indian companies wanting to go abroad, and so on and so forth. So I remember those good times working with the major law firms, especially having great practice on the investment side, inbound, outbound, both, and looking at more of that roles. And that's the time when I see there is some kind of a shift which is happening in the roles of in-house counsel. And probably that's the time when companies decide to add more and more people into the teams, because till then it would be a member, two-member team, which would largely be an interface between the company and the law firms. But that's changing. I would say by 95, it's changing. 95, 97 is the time when companies, and the large ones particularly, start building small teams. So we went through that phase, and slowly and gradually, then we see with the teams growing, we also see a lot of legal work now coming in-house. So that's a phase there. So the next 5-7 years, we see larger teams, more roles, more responsibilities being added, and therefore I think the in-house get to add more value. We'll come back to the value part, but I think that's the journey really. And then we reach to a phase when we've done the Y2K, then there are these .coms, and then there is all this outsourcing happening and big time, multinationals coming into India. And that also brings a new culture, especially, from a legal standpoint. Fortunately, I mean, as you just mentioned, I was with Tata's at that point in time, and that just kind of gave me that, thrust, I would say. And then we get into a new phase actually. So what's happened is litigation, which primarily was the role responsibility for in-house as an interface, etc., is now coupled with commercial transactions. So you have lawyers in-house who are looking at legal documentation, closing contracts. You have lawyers who are now talking about compliances and giving it a larger picture. You have new roles which get attached, and as it move forward in terms of ethics and compliance again, and then you become a very important role in terms of a confidant to the board, to the CEO, to the board of directors, to the risk committee. Another additional role that gets attached is, I would say, a risk officer's role, because you understand the regulations, you understand what it means to the organization, and therefore how do you plug those risks. And then with globalization, as I just said, I saw myself particularly looking at evaluating jurisdictions where, I'm talking of TCS and HCLs and of the likes, and TechMs also, where and which jurisdiction should you be going to, what is the regulatory setup, what is the what are the advantages, disadvantages from a regulatory standpoint, and then parallelly you are also becoming a business enabler in that manner, because you are then sitting in structuring the transactions, structuring the department, structuring the whole business as such, I would say. And then you mentioned about funding, and all of that. So that's been the journey, and I think I've also been fortunate to be a part of all this process. So therefore, from starting from a lawyer who would carry files to somebody who's now sitting structuring deals, and I don't want to miss this piece. I remember at TCS we had a big time deal in those days, some hundreds of crores or 1,000 crore deal, which required us to, as an organization, to build a whole IT infrastructure for, I believe it was Navy or some armed forces. And I first time remember sitting in a war room where you had all the business guys, but you also had the lawyers sit and decide what are the key essential things which should go into the contract piece. And to just know what goes into the contract, you first need to understand the business, how the things will span out, and so on and so forth. And that gives thinking about IPRs, privacy, and many other aspects. So I think that's been the journey, and I've been fortunate to have lived that piece. And I'm sure Rahul kind of mentioned a little bit of that during his piece, and look forward to hearing from Charyo and Bhavika.
Thank you, Vineet. I think that was very insightful in terms of, again, setting the context of the ecosystem and the in-house legal community and its sort of challenges that exist today. Charyo, maybe I can just call on you, given that your role has been predominantly in the startup space, and that obviously brings its own sort of unique challenges and requires a display of certain characteristics which are very specific to that industry. Maybe your perspective would also help the conversation.
Thank you, Ashish. I think Rahul and Vineet has put it beautifully, but I think where things got different, once I got into becoming a lawyer, when I started off with Wipro, as lawyers, we had a very set, agenda. There was an approval matrix. Uh, this was what was tagged to finance. This is what is tagged to business. You were never the decision maker. You were the one who kind of was an executioner. And I think over the years, um, the traditional industries also changed. What that meant was e-commerce came into the picture. Now suddenly there was a lot of legal systems catching up with how should the laws be made now, right? And hence I think the lawyers played a very, very important role because we were operating in the gray. There was never uh, you had business folks, brilliant ideas coming up. As lawyers, we had to say, okay, what's the framework where none existed on a legal side? How do we ensure that there's a good balance, right? And I think that's where my journey counts a lot, because I've seen that journey in Flipkart, of regulations coming in, ensuring that businesses did not go through any knee-jerk reactions. How do we ensure that business continuity did not get impacted? And hence that journey from traditional at that point in time, a Wipro, which told you as a lawyer of how much you can do, versus today in a startup ecosystem where you get to completely experiment. You are actually to some extent building that script today, which is going to help you, or the younger lawyers to how do we take things forward, which means that before you even speak of the law, you need to understand your business. And that's going to be an ever changing business, right? Because you're also going to have to deal with founder expectations, with board expectations, external in law enforcement agencies. There are a lot of folks today that where a general counsel needs to play that balancing act, and which is where I feel has been my journey when it comes to startups. It's a lot to deal with, and it's never ending. So it's a brilliant
Right.
challenge time.
Sure. No, I mean, thanks, Sharyu, for that perspective. I mean, it's obvious that the kind of compulsions, business compulsions that you usually encounter in the startup space, I think are definitely more pronounced. The consequences of actions, recommendations that the teams are required to make have ramifications which will affect everything from fundraising to business expansion and, valuation and things like that. So definitely, a lot to sort of take on.
Also,
Bhavika, sorry, go
the
ahead, Sharyu.
the government might come up with a change because you decided to do something. So that's something that one has to be careful on as well.
Absolutely. And we've seen enough instances of that. Bhavika, maybe, given your own experience of, having worked in PE for a while, you've done some FMCG work as well, you've done, outright retail, e-commerce. Maybe, just a little bit from you in terms of how you have seen the industry itself also demanding different things of you as the, in-house counsel for the companies that you worked at.
Yeah. So 6 minutes to good afternoon, but yeah, good morning, everyone. So thank you so much, everyone, for setting the context here to my panelists. So my story, I was laughing when Vineet was actually telling a story. So I'm lucky enough to be in an era where things were a little settled in the legal stream, I would say. But I had a little opposite story here. I come from a family who had chartered accountants, and my dad had one condition that I should do something, to do with a professional degree. So I started off my career, with company secretary, because I said CS, I am a CA, I am not interested in. And then, doing my CS, I realized that I think legal should be a good profession. Let me start, studying law. And I think things just became better. And I said, and I practiced as a company secretary for some time. Worked for a practice company secretary firm as well. Today, of course, there are very different sets and different types of CS companies and firms you can see, which are very holistic in their approach. But I think it was too early for me to start there. And then, things moved when I got into law, and I said, this is what I want to do. So for me, the entire concept of being a counsel to becoming a general counsel was a journey. And I've actually had a different industry experience, if I have to say, in my entire career. I started off with a PE, worked there for almost 7 years. So it was mainly to do with the regulatory side of business. And then, of course, I tasted a lot of startup work as well. And Sharayu, I must say that it's a great space to be in, but yes, it's one of the most difficult space to be in, because being a counsel, I think, and then of course, just going back to the value part, but what I've realized in the last 4 or 5 years of my career is that it's not just about knowing the law, okay, and it's not just about you decoding the law for the business, because you're no more a consultant to the business. The business actually wants you to be a partner to the the entire setup. And I think for the last 5 years, I've been so much into the business, attending meetings, being with the leadership team, understanding every aspect of business. And that has been, an interesting journey for me. It's more for me, it's about solution orientation plus, partnership with the business. And, the entire framework of just being a legal counsel is completely gone. So when I read a section today, it's not just a plain Jane reading of the law. It's actually reading it with, me knowing that what my business is actually wanting me to find solution to. So the entire journey has been very interesting for me to kind of start with an in-house counsel, being a legal counsel, doing a lot of regulatory work, moving myself into an advocacy side of business as well. And, and then being rounding off to become more solution oriented in my approach. So it's been an exciting journey for me.
Thanks so much, Bhavika. I think, again, we're very pleased that we have such diverse perspectives around the table on the journeys we've had as in-house counsel, amongst the three of you at least, which actually brings me to the, really sort of key facet of our conversation as to how does one really define value in today's context when it comes to in-house counsel. The search for delivering more than expected, or, delivering more value to the business. I think that's a very key question. It's something, very existential to in-house legal teams today. So maybe Vineet, maybe I can call on you to just give your thoughts on, how do you look at the concept of value when it comes to in-house legal teams today?
Ashish, I think the first value that all of us kind of bring is we facilitate business. So we help in revenue generation. So I think, and there are multiple facets to this in terms of, each of us, few of us today, and, Rahul in your earlier stint, we come from different industries, etc. So we will have our own, space, in the sense that there will be a great environment. We'll have our own business environment. We will have our own set of rules, etc. And our company, company has certain objectives, etc. So we are all there to facilitate, and how best we do it is the value that we must firstly generate. So I think that's the first piece. And I think it is in this context that, we will help in search new jurisdictions, new markets, new products, new service lines. And how do we let that happen, in the sense that that happens in the most, and the second value therefore will be, how do we facilitate in cost optimization also. So cost optimization will not necessarily be in terms of just the, the legal costs, though that's an important piece, but also in terms of how do we help find a structure which is most cost optimized. So that could be the second value that we bring to the table. Third value to my mind would be, how do we create, and the times have changed. We are a global, we work in a global environment. Today, one wrong action in one jurisdiction can actually throw you out of business in almost all parts of the world. So I think we live in a complex, very connected environment, and therefore we need to ensure that we have a compliant structure, etc. in place. So I think that's the third value to my mind that the general counsels and the in-house counsels really bring to the table. And I'm calling it in-house counsel only, but I think we playing, and therefore this comes from a fact that we wear different hats. So therefore, I think that is our third hat, and that's the third value that we bring, which is, as I said, the compliance piece. And then, of course, we help in terms of other areas, which is how do we keep our board and company protected at all times. I think the board really needs to know at all times as to what's happening, what is the wrong that you see. And I'm sure all of us have developed different mechanisms. It could be color coding for certain activities, red, or where we are approaching a yellow, etc. And we're not just at the red. So how do we go and prompt to the senior management, etc., to say, look, we are entering into a zone. And lastly, I think the value, or maybe there'll be many more, but last important piece to my mind would be, how do we say sometimes a no, which could mean no go on a particular opportunity. But I think that's important, and it also depends on how the company, the management, etc. views it. But I think that's a very important piece to my mind. I think to stop where we see there is no hope, where we see there is no way that we should be going forward. So I think that protects the company, which is not going to go out of business, which protects my management, who would not face civil, criminal charges, etc. So I think these are a couple of the 3-4 values that I can think of immediately, which we as in-house counsel really bring to the table. Yeah.
Great. No, thanks, Vineet, for that. I think it really sets the conversation on the path to being very, very particular in how we define value and how we sort of, as a community of in-house counsel, sort of think about what we bring to the table. I mean, I can just recall a presentation which we had invited one of our private equity clients to come and deliver to us, and they really started by saying that, look, to me, lawyers are bad news, because at best what you will tell me is no. So I would rather not have you in the conversation rather than say no. But I mean, things have come a long, long way from that point in time, where now people come to us from a more solution-oriented sort of an approach to say, okay, this is our objective. Now tell us, let's discuss how we achieve that. So thanks for that.
Maybe sorry to interject. Interject, but I think, Ashish, I have to say this. I can't stop myself saying this, because I remember days when we would go to the management and say, boss, we can't do this for XYZ reasons. As simple as a trademark not doable for the reasons that there is a conflict. And the answer would be, you are not here to tell us the laws why you can't do it, or the regulations why this cannot be done. I think the role is, how do you get this done? Of course, not in an illegal way, but sorry, I had to pick this up. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Sharyu, how would you look at the concept of value? And do you have sort of your own personal way of defining, or or sort of articulating what value means in your setup?
So in startup ecosystems, I think general counsels have risen to the role where they've become the face of the company. And they are looked at as the ambassador of the company. So it is very important for the general counsel to understand where to draw the line. And I think that itself is very important as a value. And I think not just a legal compass, but also a moral and an ethical compass. Because there are a lot of gray zones that each of us are maneuvering into. There are other aspects in terms of educating. A lot of times what happens is, as general counsels, and especially in the startup area, the ideas, we working with these amazing founders, great ideas, but how do we implement them? And if there are hurdles with be it with law enforcement agencies, or speaking to the governments, etc., there's a lot of education that happens in doing so, right? And I think Bhavika put it very, very beautifully in calling it advocacy. I think that's a very, very important aspect of the value, that how do we educate, that continuous education, and where do we push the boundaries, and like Vineet said, that hard no. So that calling the hard no is very difficult, and I think that's the one part as a general counsel which has not changed across for decades, where most people will not want to hear a no. They want to hear then how, right? In fact, a lot of times today in startups, it's not that, hey, I'm the lawyer, I'm telling you how things are. The bare act is projected, and then each one is going to have a point of view on it, right? And it doesn't matter that you have a law degree. The fact that you are able to debate out everything, which means your depth of knowledge, is very, very essential. And I think Ashish, when you spoke about we don't like to have lawyers, that's something that I've heard so many times, and my answer's always been this: have the lawyer in your corner, because then the need for a litigation does not arise. And I think that's what I keep telling people I've worked with, that how essential having that lawyer in your corner is. So yeah, that's to me the value portion of it.
Thank you. Bhavika, do you have a take on this?
Yeah, so
well?
I want to add to what Charayu said, and she said that not having a lawyer is always good at your corner. So, and I'm telling you, the way the businesses are going today, especially with startup companies. Like, I can share an example with you of what we were just talking about. How do you add value, right? And I remember when a new piece of legislation comes in, right? And if you're a startup company, initially there'll be a lot of hesitation, okay, and you will have to put across your point as to why do you need this is important, and that requires you to have in-depth knowledge. So I think to add the how GCs add value would be is, one is you really need to be very sharp, not just with the laws, but also to argue with that why is this required. And I think the role of GC becomes very, very difficult in these scenarios, I would say, because one is you can't say no to business. You have to find a solution, and then you have to color it to be movable and workable with every department. So one of my examples was when I was with e-commerce company and the press note 2 came in, and I remember that it was like a big thing in the industry. The entire way we did business got changed, like overnight. And then we all were in action. We had to draft a lot of pieces, policies, and see how we can work around this press note too. And the another piece that is very interesting is that I'm now part of a retail company, right? And we're such consumer-facing company. Uh, I think advocacy has been really one of the biggest pillar that I've seen today. GCs are picking up. Of course, there are these roles of corporate affairs, which are also being played by the others in the industry. But I've seen GCs play a very important role, and they can add value to the business when they go out. They understand the business. They meet the correct people. They network well. And I can give you a very recent example that what we've done with our organization. So being a retail arm, it's very important for us to generate business, right? I mean, we need to be working 24/7. And that was one of the pieces that I kind of took up with the government, with the, with the various associations like FICCI. And I think it has brought a lot of difference to, the way we look at business today. It's like, I'm not a roadblock, because when I keep on telling that, okay, there are certain hours, but looking at it, saying that, okay, these are the minimal hours we can do business, looking at it from a businessman's perspective would mean that how do you increase those working hours? So I think that was one piece of, value addition, I would say. The other piece is, I think, meeting with competitors and the industry people. I think, I don't know, there used to be a place where people used to not network so freely. But today, I think the era is very different. Most of the GCs are going through same piece of issues, and it always helps when you meet the like-minded set. So I think to add value to your role as GC to the organization, it's very important for the GC to be outside. It's not important to just be in the office and meet the stakeholders internally, but also to have your piece of networking outside. I think these are the important pieces from my experiences.
No, absolutely. I think, you had mentioned advocacy earlier as well, but you're absolutely right. I think the role that even we as outsiders now look at from a general counsel perspective is about being ambassadors, not just for your companies, in many cases, also the sector itself, and, using platforms like CII or FICCI or, other opportunities to provide comments on various drafts of legislations or, regulations, to be able to sort of bring sort of a more rounded perspective to the conversation. So that's absolutely key. And I think, we did sort of touch upon this in various sort of bits till now, which is, I think it's really the proximity to business and the understanding of business, which will set a really effective GC apart from somebody who might be just, sort of checking the boxes. So given that, each of you have sort of always also had, sort of had to jump or move from one organization to another, which is obviously in many cases across different sectors as well and size of organizations. Do you have any sort of best practices and as to how you organize, getting to know the business better? Is there a template you follow? Is there some sort of a framework you follow to sort of say that, look, this is how I'm going to approach, the business teams and, get myself familiar or better acquainted with their needs? I mean, in any order at all, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, so I would like to, sorry, yeah, Vineet, please go ahead.
No, it's okay. Bhavika, you.
No,
Please.
I just wanted to say that, so Ashish, it's a very good question because I've jumped sectors. And trust me, the initial hesitation was always, will I be able to do my best? It's a new sector, right? I mean, I don't have the complete understanding of the sector. I've come from a sector which is very completely different from this. And I think that initial hesitation, okay, not always was supported by the business. Trust me, because not today. I'm very lucky, I would say, because and also the way the businesses are moving today, they really want the legal person to be part of the leadership team. I think which makes life really easy because that allows you easy access. And I'm sure Mr. Vineet would be able to agree to this because it was not the case earlier. There was a lot of hesitation for you to be sitting on the the leadership team to understand the business, what's going around, what are the numbers. I mean, trust me, that was not the case 10 years back when things were, it was very different. Today we are very lucky to kind of have that position, so that makes life easy to an extent. But yes, when you join in your organization, there are things which we keep in mind. One of them is we check, most important is how is the entire process set. Whatever we may say, but it's very important for all of us to know that the processes that the company follows, because that sets the tandem for you to experiment and do different things, especially keeping the legal side clean. So signatories, and looking at the SOPs. Like I can give you one of my example, because it's a retail space, the IPR is one of the most important concern for us because we are across the country, right? And it's very important, how do I protect my marks? So one of the most important aspect that we put in place looking at the business was, to have an IPR policy in place to ensure that if things go wrong, how will we be dealing with this? So yes, there are certain checks and balances, and it's very important for GCs when they want to add value to business to constantly do this, not just when you join the organization. To me, for example, I keep on doing this health check every 6 months, every quarter, to ensure that if there is a particular law, how are we implementing it? Is there a gap anywhere? I mean, implementation is not just one time, but it's important to keep on assessing. And I'm sure we'll talk about tools. And in that case, today technology is quite active, and I'm sure we'll kind of discuss about this.
So just to add, I haven't. I mean, if you see, I haven't moved sectors, so largely been IT. So maybe I don't have a real answer, but you know what? People are the same. Industries may change, sectors may change, but I think, Ashish, your question was, how do you work around with the teams, be it in the same organization, new set of people, new organizations, etc., and how do you take that forward, right? So I think we are in a very dynamic world. Even for example, in the IT space, we are not doing the IT business the traditional way that used to happen, say 20 years. Every second day there is a new line of business which is getting added. And so therefore that brings a new set of people, new set of demands, and the new ways of doing business. And as Bhavika rightly said, you have to keep yourself abreast with the regulatory changes, not just the changes in the Indian scenario, but howsoever they are happening globally, because they all impact your operations, because no business is an India business anymore. I think it gets impacted somewhere or the other at some quarters. So you have to keep yourself abreast with, of course, the regulatory changes. But I think relationship is important. You be wherever. So you change sector, you change industry, you change roles. I think what is very relevant is how do you build that confidence with the people that you support. So for me, for example, or for all of us, there are multiple departments which are our stakeholders. So business, of course, is the biggest stakeholder. Then you also have an HR, which is your stakeholder. You have finance, you have multiple departments who kind of look to you for support, etc. So I think it's all about relationship also. How do you give them the confidence that here you are, you can give them the right solution, and you're not going to interrupt business, you're not going to hamper the business. So I think the principle is you have to be a business facilitator, you have to be seen that you are here to help them, and also raise the red flags, but at the same time not stop the business. So I think if you start with that, what do I say, with that set of mindset, with that game plan, etc., I think it works very well. And then they probably appreciate the fact that the red flags, and then of course you also have to be logical, to my mind. So whosoever in the sales team that you are catering to, I'm emphasizing on sales team because they are largest customers for all of us. But how do you kind of tell them that, look, this is doable, this is not doable, be frank, be friendly at times. I think, and I always say this at all platforms, that, and I don't know the others, but normally you would see when the business folks get together, they would invite an HR team, they would invite a finance team, but I normally see a legal team not even getting invited. I think for some reasons, either they fear you, either they don't like you. I don't know. I still haven't found answers in so many years, and I'm still wondering what it is. But I think they kind of still feel that you kind of hamper, or probably we are egoist, I don't know. Probably we tell them law very firmly, do not do, and so on. So we are also mending our ways. But I think we have to be pretty flexible. We have to be approachable. I think that's also important to my mind. And rather, as Bhavika just mentioned, you can't be sitting in your cabin, workstation, room, etc. You need to go out. You need to ask them the problems. You need to understand their issues. And as policy advocacy, she just mentioned, I think you need to take those issues which are wider issues, which have a bigger, industry impact. Then you take it to the CIIs and the FICCIs and NASSCOMs and others of the world. I don't know. It's important. In my last organization, as we did contracting, M&A, compliance, etc., the company thought it worthwhile that let's attach corporate affairs as a function to my profile. And probably I think I did okay. So I think they realized that there is a problem. There are there are issues that can impact the business, and probably we as lawyers who understand the law, the regulatory frameworks, etc., can take it up at the forums, etc., and get them the solution. So if you are friendly, forthcoming, approachable, taking their cause, etc., I think within your company, new teams, new sectors, I think those are the mantras that one has to carry along.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fareed. Sharyu, please.
Have put it so beautifully. Just to sum up what they spoke about, right? I mean, in today's world, like Bhavika said, even I've changed a lot of sectors, and which meant that you had to be abreast before you even jumped into that sector. The world itself has shrunk. We have so much of information available to each of us. Typically, the way I've operated is I've prepared a 100-day plan basis all the publicly available information. Once I get in, then of course, I try and set up regular meetings with business leaders. I think that's something that I have learned over the years of how important it is to attend business reviews, go through your business reports, know your numbers, and understand what all are, at an Uber level, at a company level, what are the goals that we are trying to achieve. Unless legal decides that it is an equal participant, or it is part of that goal building exercise, until then I don't think we'll be adding enough value, so to say. A lot of times what we don't read is go through our internal audit reports. That I think is a good way for us to understand where all are the gaps. And of course, when litigations happen or a new law comes up, that itself is an exercise for us to learn of where all are the gaps that we need to fix. But in my view, there are reactions and then there are proactive actions that one needs to take, and how we approach both these is very important in our learning curves of the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm just keeping an eye on time. I think one of the themes I definitely don't want to miss talking about is, using tech, leveraging tech and newer forms of tech-enabled solutions, whether it is AI-based or machine learning-based. How do you see that entire shape evolving? And I'm sure you must be inundated by people trying to offer you different solutions and, the one-stop shop for all your pains and aches, when it comes to operations and things like that. But I mean, I know that, like on things like case management, etc., there have been some very effective solutions which have been deployed, and a lot of companies use them very successfully. But is that something you actively keep an eye out for in terms of equipping yourself and the team to deliver, things more efficiently with a higher degree of probability? Just maybe, some thoughts around how you view tech and how do you sort of navigate the entire tech solution part for your business?
So I think Ashish, I don't know who this was addressed. I'm so sorry. I'm just getting distracted with some phone calls. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think tech, and I think we missed mentioning this piece. I think it's very important and relevant today. I think tech is just taken the world by storm. Somehow, as lawyers, both law firms and in-house, I think we've kind of been living in a fact that it's going to take a while, especially to our industry, etc. So I personally think it's there sitting on our head already. How much of damage will it do? I really don't know, because to my mind, the mundane jobs are going to go away. Routine work will just vanish. You will have the machines do it. You have the chatbots who can kind of give solutions. You ask them and the solutions are there. You have tools which can predict what can be an outcome in a given scenario. You have tools which predict even to the fact that what X judge would deliver in a situation, etc. So it's a dangerous world. So tech is something that is going to take it by storm. It's already taken the world by storm. When it comes to we lawyers in-house particularly, I think we are all adopting technology slowly, gradually, in some way or the other. I think all of us have CLM. I think it's an old story now. I think all of us are on a contract lifecycle management tool. What has happened is it's got an artificial intelligence, etc. now features added. So therefore, it's gone to the next levels of contracting review where you have systems prompting you, etc., etc. So that's a revolution, and tech is facilitating. I think the litigation management is anyways has always been a tool. We are seeing newer generations. Compliance tools are there in big time. I think Bhavika would appreciate. I think as a company secretary, I think there is a lot of work which is happening. and I'm sure the tech is going to facilitate the regulators and both corporations, etc. So I think that's a big another piece that is sitting on us, and I think slowly and gradually we are adopting. So I think largely tech in the legal tech is something that we need to adopt. I mean, COVID, we saw the courts and we all became virtual. We just, I mean, that's technology also in a manner. So and now that we've gone that path, there is no going back. So my sum up will be that we better adopt, we go to the new modules, we take the aid of these tools and technologies to the best of our advantage and make take full leverage out of it. And I think don't worry about too much of the headcount losses, etc., which in anyways are bound to happen. But yeah, it's really a great facilitator and a great aid. And therefore, lastly, I have been pushing whenever I go to any universities, etc. We have a Mahindra Law College also. We are pushing AI and other technology as courses for lawyers. I think it has to be there in a big way. I think we all need to be upskilled, not just on laws, regulatory changes, but I think on technology also. So you'll have a BTech LLBs and all of that stuff, which is there and which will become more prevalent now. So it's a technology added as well. Yeah.
Definitely.
I
Please.
just wanted to add, I completely agree with Vineet. So, this year for me, the theme was to actually have something done on technology side. Okay. And, that was one of our MBOs. So just imagine the businesses today are wanting companies or teams to actually go tech, because record keeping, and I work very closely with the secretarial team as well, and I've realized that there's so much happening on that world as well, where sensitive information, insider trading, they're all now on the tech. So trainings are so important for employees today. That's one piece. Second is record keeping. So companies are really pushing very hard. We are in a business where we have almost 460 properties across pan India, which means lease agreements, which also means licenses, right? And the food industry today, there are multiple licenses. How do you track all of this? So it's completely impossible for a manual person to kind of do all of this. So technology is very, very important, and I think the compliance tools have played a very important role, where at least we have those triggers on expiry of licenses, which makes governance a big thing. And just introducing this term ESG, which is now the world that we live in, right? As legal professionals, company secretaries, and as business people, it's very important for us to have good governance, especially being on the listed company side. And for me, ESG has been such a learner, because I am also quite involved on the ESG side, and I think that's something, in addition to the legal professional's role, is to think differently for the environment, to think differently when you give decisions to the business, and also to ensure that there is full governance on the side. So technology is a big yes. My entire team is kind of put on role to learn every day a new piece on technology side. And yes, just to add, what Viniji said, that yeah, legal professionals are considered to be like Hadoop people, and that's one of the things for my team. Just to kind of add here, I keep on telling them that listen, we need to be happy lawyers. It's very important for us to go and network, not just for work, but otherwise also, so that you are always very pleasant. That needs to change, because people should come to you. You should be approachable. So yeah, that's most important.
Sharyu, anything to add?
Actually, I think in today's times, right, as lawyers, we work for tech companies, etc., with very big innovative ideas, taking technology to the next level. And as lawyers, and that's the irony, right? As lawyers, we've not really caught up to that space. I mean, it's a running joke always. How many lawyers does it take to start a conference, right? So everyone will be struggling with the tech in that conference room full of lawyers. So
no, Sharyu, just to add here, just to interject here, I think a lot of joke is about how do you use Excel files. I don't know why they just say you only know how to work on Word files, you don't know how to work on Excel. I mean, this is a standard joke for all of us in the fraternity.
Yeah,
and PPTs also.
Yeah, and PPTs. So, I think as lawyers, it's time we stop pushing back on technology and use it to our advantage. I've looked at a number of companies. I remember evaluating this company somewhere in Israel, which was actually helping us, review our contract. So, which means that my headcount could be lowered. So somewhere we are not thinking of how do I improve my output, how do I improve the quality of my documents. I'm still worried about, will I have my job? We're not graduating to, oh great, now the mundane work is going to go, I can graduate to some bigger problem. I think that's where we need to start looking at technology now to evolve to solving greater problems.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Okay, so my last sort of formal question to the group, and I think I was just maybe saving it because it's a little tricky. At least I see it as a little tricky in the sense that, for each of you in your own organizations, the number of stakeholders you manage can be quite varied. So whether it is the board, it is the management, it is institutional investors, and sometimes the company as a standalone entity. And in such situations, and we've seen enough and more instances in the recent past of questions being asked of how does one sort of manage not just expectations but from a legal standpoint the risks associated with behaviors or display of certain sort of way of running businesses, etc. So as in-house counsel yourselves, how do you sort of navigate some of those situations? Because on the one hand, you have to earn your stripes as being a trusted advisor, in close proximity with the management. But at the same time, you could have a very sort of compelling, how should I put it? Maybe you're compelled to also be answerable in the same breath to the stakeholders, the shareholders of the company and the board itself. So is that something which sort of worries you, or do you think, it's something you sort of navigate, as and when something comes up, or do you have an approach to how to manage this? Vineet, maybe we can start with you.
So I think you rightly said difficult question. No simple answer. But I think, you have to, simply put, I think you have to play it on the front foot. You have to be transparent and honest about it. Had we been on the front foot, we would have won the World Cup the day before. So I think you have to probably take it. I mean, you can't be manipulative. You can't be, slimy. You can't be, evasive, giving some piece, not giving the other pieces, etc. I think so. I think the in-house general counsels and in-house and general counsels today have to start on the basis of trust. I think it's a trust position. You see, GCs also sit on board of companies, if not on the principal company, at least on the subsidiaries and other businesses, etc. So I think trust is paramount. Honesty and transparency, I think these are the 2-3 things. It may in short run sometimes create some heartburns, create some problems, etc. But to my mind, it works well. And as you rightly said, the stakeholders, be it the directors, be it the funding companies, etc., all want an honest view. So I don't think you can put anything under the cover. You just have to go all out, be honest about it, and of course be solution oriented. So if you have a solution and you are not camouflaging it but being honest about it, I think it works. And I'm sure and it has worked for me at least. So I remember an incident in earlier organization, I'm not naming it, where I took a stance to the board, standing before the board, telling them that this is a case where we need to go to the CVC. As an organization, we need to report. All others, business leaders, had a different view. I said, no, this is a case where we should take that stance. And the board kind of, and the MD stood, and we did make, of course, it created some problems in the short run, but I think in the long run, it worked well. So I think you have to be transparent and be upfront.
And I think with Vineet, I couldn't agree more, right? Because trusted advisor earning your stripes does not mean you're expected to be a yes man. It means that you are putting your views very transparently in the best interest of the company, and that's the only way to earn your stripes. I couldn't agree with Vineet more.
I always have lived with a funda that, we are gatekeepers. This has been my learning, and I think in the last 3 years, what I have realized is that people love you if you're transparent. They may test you at the times. I've seen founders, they don't like when you argue with them, you tell them this is black and white. They may not like you. But I'm telling, it's, at the end of the day, I think it's you're answerable to your own conscience. So, and I think,
Yes.
it's a very different role. I keep on telling my team all the times that, just imagine the entire organization works with you, because every department will come and meet the legal department, right? I mean, it's such an important position where people are consulting you and asking you for questions. So I completely agree that transparency is a key to add value, because that's how you're going to help your business also take the right decisions. So, yeah.
No, very well. Thank you for that. I'm going to just open the floor for any questions that we may have from the audience. And while we wait for maybe those to come through, maybe one sort of general question at the end of the conversation, really, to say, how do you usually look at, external counsel as a part of your larger team, and how do you sort of see them contributing to your effectiveness within your organizations? Because again, I mean, we would be very interested to know how we can make you look better in front of your own stakeholders, and what does that mean for us? How do we sort of conduct ourselves, or how do we, bring more of ourselves to the conversation? So in any order, Sharyu, maybe you can start.
I can start. I think it's a partnership. And with external counsels, the reason an internal counsel will typically go is, especially in the space that I am in, will typically go where there is a requirement to put forth our viewpoints to the lawmakers, or educating, be it the law enforcement agencies or external partners. So it's essentially industry views when we will start engaging with external counsels, and hence that partnership to understand what are the issues facing the industry, and the general counsel to be able to put that to an external counsel who is then going to be their voice before an external party is very important. And that's where I've seen a lot of my engagement with external counsels.
Thank you.
So maybe just to add, largely, I would personally, and that's been my trend. I mean, of course, you go to law firms, you will go to different law firms, basis the problem in hand, their strength, etc. But I think what is also important is the lawyer there and the confidence that you have built over the period. Sometimes you would have seen, we going with the lawyer. I've done that a couple of times, irrespective of whether he's moved from X to Y law firm. So I think that's the confidence that you have to have with the law firm, and more importantly with the dealing lawyer, the dealing external lawyer. I think that's important. Two, I think, as I said, you have to be, as GC, as in-house counsels, you have to have that relationship. We work largely our engagements are in US, Europe, etc. And a lot of times the lawyers will be negotiating settlements, negotiating deals, etc., while we sit with them. So unless you have that confidence, you had that relationship, and you had that, that trust in them, I think that's paramount. So I think just to support and just to add, that's what we look to. And I think it works well if you are transparent, if the lawyers are transparent. But I think what is also important is you have very different scenarios emerging in terms of disputes, the kind of disputes, etc., and different sectors, etc. So then you have to look for the right partners. So I think once you have, the right partners, you have to just go all out and attain and achieve what you want to. So I think
Sure.
that's it.
So we in
That's
fact have
my
a question from the audience, which is just picking up on this very theme to say that how will the relationship between in-house counsel and external advisors change going forward? Do you see external lawyers being used less or more?
I don't think I mean, the relationship continues to be as cordial as it has ever been. So there is no change to that effect. But I think some roles surely with the companies now building big teams, you know, all companies today have large teams, particularly in traditional companies, IT, telecom, etc. You have huge number of lawyers sitting in house. So there are a lot of stuff which is come in house. For myself, I can tell you, we do a lot of stuff, due diligence on the mergers acquisition side in house. Try to do it as much as we can.
Right. Of course.
Real estate, contracting, IT filing. I think a lot of it is happening in house now.
Sure.
Of course, you can't not be relying on external law firms. So external law firms are always there. But I think, yes, to some extent, the role, I mean, some part of work has moved in-house to my mind.
Surely. One more question from the audience, and maybe this can be directed to each of you, is that is the future of in-house legal teams more or less lawyers in the team? And what do you think about paralegals?
I would like to
Bhavika,
answer.
Sorry, Shari, go ahead.
Rather than saying, is the headcount going to be increasing or not? I would put it differently. I would say, is the quality of your work going to improve exponentially? That would be my one word answer to this.
Right. Okay. Super.
I kind of agree to that, the quality, and also, so just wanted to add that we do have paralegals in our team. We do support, talents who want to do things, differently, and we ensure that they're part of our work profile. People should not get bored. That's the key, and it's very important for us to have different variety of work. And that's where, to answer the earlier question also, we go to external counsels where we see value. In terms of the degree of risk, in terms of degree of knowing that in the future we want the partners to be on our side, what is the kind of stand they would take, and that's where we need question. Answer comes on trust. So it's very important for us to kind of know when are we going to extend our work outside. Is when we see the volume and when we see the criticality of the situation.
And just to add, exactly what the fellow panelists said, each of us play a different role. Paralegals have a very important role, so that's not going away. Of course, there will be some proportion change here and there. The campus new hires, etc., play a different role, and as people move up, they play a different role. So I think it's not changing much. Of course, as I said, technology will take some toll, but largely I don't see much of a change happening, really. I think we all have to, as rightly said by others, we will have to move and upskill continuously and be able to deliver qualitatively. Yeah.
Right, which actually then brings us to the very last question before we wind up. And this question is really in terms of how has the in-house counsel teams sort of work changed in context of social media, public relations, and other related forms of, maybe crisis management in some situations, or just sort of managing, expectations in terms of advertising guidance and things like that. Is that something you see yourself getting more and more involved in? Is that sort of blurring the lines between what you do as legal advisors and, communication experts? So, maybe a quick take on this from each of you.
Yeah, so I would go first on this one, because the type of industry I am in, we are consumer facing, right? And we see day in, day out, social media has become like, a place where things are everywhere. It is so difficult to control news, and reputational risk is something which most of our organizations, have to deal with. And as GCs, I think our role is not limited to just giving guidance on the legal side, but to act on some of these things which go on the social media. To kind of avert this, recently we drafted a social media policy, which is now become part of our system, where employees can do certain things, they cannot do certain things, and there's a close watch on all of this. Going to the extended arm of Indonesian business that we have, TikTok is something which is quite used for doing marketing, and we realize that a lot of time employees, when they quit the organizations, they don't want their videos to be there on the social media. And I think these have changed the way we look at contracts today. And of course, with the data protection coming in, I think it's very important for us to kind of get equipped with understanding as to how do we understand the social media impact on the business. That's one side of it. And then crisis management is another thing which in a business like us, which is again consumer facing, a lot of people on the crew side, very important to educate the people, and to if there is a crisis, how are you going to manage the crisis. So I think both of these have been very, very critical, and legal have played critical role as GCs. We are part of these committees. We are there when the damage control needs to happen.
Yeah,
thank you for that. Yes, Vineet.
So Ashish, this is an industry. This is a full-fledged industry. I remember good old days when you had an email reaching the chairman or some big time, and there was be a big time issue, crisis and crisis management, everybody running left, right, and center to ensure that the mail reaching, for example, a Ratan Tata has to be addressed, even if it was bullshit. So I think social media, and it has become a tool also. I would say it's a tool to extract unfairly. So I think as lawyers, the role is very important. I think as each of us, we do participate in preparation of social media rules, policies, procedures, question and answers. In a crisis situation, how do we help diffuse the crisis? How do we manage issues? I think a lot of times the legal team comes into the forefront. They drive this crisis management. In fact, recently I was speaking with Anshul in your labor practice the last week or the week before that. We were talking of labor reforms, etc. And one of the big ticket item that's come up is the social media being used by employees, particularly, or the ex-employees, to achieve some ends. So I think there is where the in-house really play a very important role, both proactively and of course in crisis management. So that's a very important piece of support that we in-house kind of, and of course we look forward to partners in external law firms, etc., who kind of support us. But I think it's a very important piece of, it takes a lot of time of our productive work actually.
Right. No, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you all for your time this afternoon. It's been absolutely lovely to have this conversation with all of you and have all of your perspectives. I'll just ask Rahul if he can just do a very quick closing remark for us, and then we sort of bid adieu. Thank you.
Sure. No, I think one big takeaway is that I'm personally gratifying that I'm seeing that the in-house function has really gained in respectability, responsibility, strength. Both internally and externally, the in-house team is not seen as adversarial, but as a partner who delivers solution, but ultimately is also conscience keeper of the organization. So I think that it really shows you how the industry is mature and quite personally satisfying.
Thanks, Rahul, for that. Thank you all very much for your time, and thank you to the audience for dialing in this afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.